The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not represent the position of the host, this show, or any organization either party is affiliated with. All content is shared purely for educational and inspirational purposes. Nothing discussed here constitutes professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to independently verify any information before acting on it. The host is not responsible for any outcomes resulting from guest statements. By listening, you agree that you are solely responsible for how you use the information shared. Welcome to the Tech Sharmit podcast, where technology is not just news, but the roadmap to the future. This is a space where we explore the latest tech trends, AI, startups, gadgets, and the ideas that redefine the way we think. Leading this conversation is Amit Sharma, globally recognized as Tech Sharmit. A technologist from Bharat, Amit brings an Indian perspective to the global technology landscape. With deep technical expertise and strong industry insight, and for his contributions and impact within the global tech community, he has been recognized with several prestigious honors, including Google Developer Expert, Microsoft MVP, IBM Champion, and Planet Mainframe Influencer. Through this podcast, he shares practical knowledge, real-world perspectives, and globally relevant thinking designed to help you stay ahead in an ever-evolving technology landscape. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Tech Sharmit channel to stay updated with future episodes. And if you're looking to level up your skills, don't forget to explore the Tech Sharmit digital course book in the description box, where you'll find thousands of free programming courses curated to help you grow as a developer. So plug in your headphones and join us as we begin today's episode of the Tech Sharmit podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm joined by another special guest, Nuno Andrade, who is joining us from Portugal. If I talk about Nuno, he is a senior developer, cloud architect, and a Google developer expert in cloud technologies with extensive experience across Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and AWS. So in today's episode, we will talk about the cloud architecture, multi-cloud strategies, cloud migration, scalability, performance engineering, and building resilient system. But before we get started, thank you so much, Nuno, for joining us today in this episode. And today, before we proceed further with the discussion, I would like to you to initiate the discussion by telling us a bit about yourself.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a real honor to be here. Speaking a little bit about me. Well, I've been working for a long time. I've developed systems for almost every business area there is. I have a hunger for knowledge, which is my main characteristic. And I'd like to share and solve problems and share it with everybody else. That's my main characteristics.
I think that's the reason you have contributed so much for this community as a GDE, because you have that hunger for knowledge, and also for, I would say, you also have hunger for sharing your knowledge because you have actively contributing. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, we just wanted to know about your initial days. So could you please take us back to the beginning, like what first pulled you toward the backend development and the cloud architecture? Or we just wanted to know, was there a specific moment or a project that hooked you into this IT industry?
Well, I will go back a little bit more. I will go back to my first computer when I was very little. My parents got home with a computer, and was an MSX from Philips. It has an English manual about basic language, and the tutorials that I devoured on the spot. And I remember changing the game. I was around 11, and I changed the game. It was an RPG with, you have 3 doors. If you choose the door, you will have this and that and that. And I added another door. At the moment, this was on the second day I got my computer, so I was really excited about it, and it kind of felt natural to develop and to learn more. I remember that Philips asked me to do a lot of demos of their equipments and their computers in hotels and all that stuff. So it was really soon. I've made my first commercial application. I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
It was so developing is my life basically. It's my myself. I don't see anything else professionally doing that other than this.
Okay. So as a professional, are you still enjoying game? You love to play game nowadays also?
Yes, yes, I do. I do. I like to do them more than playing them.
Okay.
But I do play games. Yes.
Because in podcast, like I have interviewed many guests who initially love to play game, then again, like after exploring so much about the gaming application, they start building it. So it's a common journey, like a good gamer turned into a good programmer. So that's the common thread between
Yeah,
all of us.
yeah. Maybe the challenge drives us, right? The
Yeah,
challenge of
right.
the game, and the challenge of the programming. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Well, so that was my beginning. That was my real love for it.
Okay. So, when we saw at your trajectory of your career, right? So we noticed that you have built your career across different deep expertise across Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, right? But mostly what we saw that a lot of engineers specialize only in one cloud provider. So what drove you to build deep expertise across all type of Google Cloud, Azure, AWS rather than picking one?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question because um, I started on the clouds with Azure, and right after I went to Google, and I started with Google in beta. There were
Mhm.
still beta versions of it, and I used it in the beta version. So my clients request solutions. I'm a freelancer. Almost all my life I've been a freelancer, so I have to adapt to what the client needs. And my hunger for knowledge, it's really an excitement to see new stuff to learn and new stuff to comprehend. So every client that asked me to be out of my comfort zone, I took it as a challenge. So I drove deep, and I'm proud to say I've worked with almost every engineering team of every
Yeah.
cloud there is, of
Mm.
every cloud provider. So I architect and I design extremely complex solutions and very big solutions, and they usually tend to help me on the design of the architecture and test the architecture and everything. And I work with all the engineering teams from the USA to Australia. I've worked with a lot of them, and it's been a real pleasure working with all of them, not only one. There's knowledge to learn in every cloud.
Yes, everyone is
So.
there something new. Yes. So, my question is, no, like if you have to explain the real practical differences between the GCP, Azure, and AWS to someone who is about to pick the platform or who is about to choose the platform today, so what would you tell them, like how you will differentiate these different things like GCP, Azure, and AWS to someone who is completely new to this platform?
Well, there is a saying which is very interesting. Is AWS is done by infrastructure person, infrastructure
Mhm.
develop personnel, and Azure is done by hybrid, and Google is done by developers for developers. So if you are a developer, it's much easier you go to Google than to go to AWS. But Azure stays in the middle, so it's kind of a compromise between the two of them, between the three of them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but for workloads purposes, in AWS, you have a lot of tools. You can
Mm.
customize almost everything that you need. But it's in some situations it's exhausting. But you can reach further if you have the knowledge to do it. You can reach further. Um, Azure. Azure now released several tools that will compete with higher workloads. Azure Functions now they are completely revamped and they're pretty useful in performance. They can reach 2 million requests in 2 seconds, which is a great feature to have. GCP is well, it's for developers. It has some tweaks. It has some tricks. but everything is very well designed as well. So every cloud has its points.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to the phrase infrastructure. If your background is infrastructure, AWS is your cloud. If your background is development, well, you should go for GCP. If you're in the middle, you're not an expert in developing, but not an expert in infrastructure, well, Azure is for sure your playground. Nevertheless, you can always learn everything from all of them. There are
Yes.
very similarities in all of them, and you just have to dig deep to understand the limits and the advantages of each one, which is very nice to do. I make a recommendation every time that I do a huge project
Mm-hmm.
is I make a POC, a proof of concept of what the application needs, and try to simulate on all the environments and all the clouds in this situation, to see which is the best fit for that purpose in hand. If the purpose is higher workloads or better infrastructure control, it depends on what your skills are and what the project requires. So that's
Correct.
why I learn all of them, because I think they all have their strengths and
Yes.
weaknesses.
Yeah, I also agree. Like if you are into the phase where you want to opt any particular technology, so there is nothing wrong to explore them one by one and just find out, like, because everyone has some pros and cons, everyone has their own
Yes.
specialties or functionality. So just explore them, and then accordingly you can decide like what suits best to your requirement, and then you can proceed with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, Nuno, I want to ask you one question regarding organization from organization point of view, because I feel that there are some organization or companies who had a biggest misconception about lifting and shifting, right? So when we are talking about the cloud re-architecture phase, so how you will draw the like, what do you think, like what the biggest misconceptions company have about the lift and shift mentality versus the true cloud native re-architecture process?
Okay. That's it has a lot of points, that question. It's a very interesting one because
Mm-hmm.
not every project is the same. So every project has its own
Correct.
specific issues and problems.
Yes.
So, but there are some situations that I think it's common. Well, I'm not a big fan of lift and shift. I like to design the applications
Yes.
to create or migrate to a cloud native, which is and one of the things is the price. The price that you pay with lift and shift, it's for sure higher than cloud native application,
Correct.
because you take what you have and you put it there on VMs or instance groups, or and you don't take advantage of your cloud,
Correct.
of all the serverless that you could have, or all the PC that you have, or all the easiest. The only thing that you gain by lifting and shifting is the provisioning is faster, because if you
Hmm.
need another VM, you just click the button, you have another VM. But
Correct.
the rest of the things, it stays complex, because you probably will have to maintain the operating systems. You probably have to maintain the disk space. You have to maintain the amount of memory, everything. You have to control everything. So I think the misconception about lift and shift is, we're going to reduce costs. No, we're not. You're going to increase the costs, because in this situation, the cloud has more costs. The gains of the cloud are where they manage the infrastructure, not us. So if we use the cloud native services, we're gonna be paying for the management part of the systems, and we only do the deploys of the code, and we only do the fun part, as I say, being a developer, of course.
Yeah.
But they will do the infrastructure. They will take care of the hardware. They will take care of all the issues that the hardware have.
Right.
Uh, so I think in most situations, the lift and shift is not the solution. I think from my experience is, I think 90% of the situations, lift and shift is not the way to go.
Correct.
I think with little effort, you can optimize the application and you can deploy. Today we have so much offer on so much components that could adapt to the native applications, so that you, with some easy deploys and easy adjustments, you can migrate to the cloud and reduce your costs by a lot. And I think lift and shift is a big misconception because of that. I don't think that migrating to the cloud is the best solution. I think migrating to the cloud using the cloud services, the cloud native services, is the best solution. Do not migrate to VMs, because you're going to just spend money, spend a lot of effort changing the application to a VM that stands in your data center. It will stand on a cloud provider. It's basically the same. The cost will be higher. I think this is a misconception of lift and shift. But we all seen it in a lot of companies, and it's common practice. And I really hope that cloud architects can step up and say, well, let's wait a minute and think about it a bit. Let's migrate it, but with a little effort, we will migrate and adjust the components to be serverless or Kubernetes or other simple solutions that will adapt. Doesn't make any sense creating a VM for Postgres or creating a VM for Redis. You have it already as a service, so it's easier to use it as a service than creating your own VM about it. So I think we have to decrease the lift and shift. I know it's still happening everywhere in the world, but I think we should step down. It shouldn't be used. It shouldn't be used. Only in specific situations like, well, the application will die in a month. Well, and we have a server problem. Okay, in that situation. But in most situations, you have a migration plan, and you have time to change things. And it's not as hard as many people think. We can take advantage of all the components there are, and the cloud providers, they will help you as well. They will help people migrating to the cloud. And we shouldn't think of everything about ourselves. We can ask them for help, and they will assist us. I had amazing work with all of the 3 cloud providers. I did amazing work with AWS. I've talked with the teams in Seattle and Chicago a lot of times, and I work with them a lot of times. I work with Azure in Australia. They really want us to optimize for this system. They don't want a huger bill. They want us to put the applications, and the application can perform. They can be an example of what their cloud can give us. And lift and shift, it's not the way to go.
Not a good way. Yeah, I think with this conversation, it's quite clear that what are the drawbacks that comes with lift and shift process or mentality, and why it is so important to reduce as much as we can, because as you also mentioned, there are still some companies who are utilizing that approach, but it is not fruitful, right? It is not going to make some benefit for your organization. So it's better to avoid it and go with a proper architecture, re-architecture process. So here I want to ask you one thing. Let's say if we are working with a project, so do you think like there is some sort of cloud migration red flags through which we can easily identify that something is not going in the right direction for our project, or it may lead to a kind of trouble for the project? So how you will identify that?
Well, again, each project is different from another, but there are a few red flags that can launch us on the right track. For example, usually when you migrate from an application from a data center, you migrate it as is. The way you think is basically the same. So you have a backend, you store it in the database, and you have a front end that calls the backend, that calls the database. And zillions of applications work like this. And when you're migrating to the cloud, all storing operations should have retries, for example. And people don't take that into consideration. For example, if a database goes down, for maintenance issues, or it's becoming slower. Usually what you see is the architecture, the guidelines of that project is add more iron or put more CPUs or add more storage. And I think the migration to the cloud should have particular situations. You have to make some kind of mechanism, some kind of retry. You have to put a pub sub, so every store operation will have retries, so that you always make sure you never lose that data. And this is very important. For example, when you when in a data center, you don't have this. You just try to save it in the database. You try 3 times. If it fails, it crashes, and the information is kind of lost. In cloud, we have more pieces available. Of course, you can install them on-prem, but they are more harder to maintain. And in cloud, they are very easy to use and very cheap. So, sorry, you have to take advantage of that. And when you are migrating to the cloud, if you don't see this aspect, for me, it's a red flag, because if you don't take advantage of those small components that allows you to never lose data, or you always have retries, and if you don't have 7 days of retries because your database is down for 7 days, which is kind of odd, but if you don't have, you have another way of processing the information. So I think the red flag on migrating to the cloud, it's you have to change the way you think. You cannot simply migrate as is. You should think about having maintenance windows. You should think about having downtimes. Not that you're going to have, but this way you make sure that you can reach the database and you can stop the database and the application continues to work flawlessly. Or when you lift up the database again, it will be working flawlessly. So it's very important to change the way we think on cloud architecture. We shouldn't always think about the way we think in the back old days, that we're going to send information to the database and it will be stored. No, there are some situations that it will not be stored. And today we have so many components that allows us to make the application more resilient and avoid logging, avoid checking logs for everything. We could just make it resilient. It's easier and you can sleep at night. There is no need for complex applications to have millions of data points being processed in one moment. You cannot be worried if we try 3 times and it's not stored in the database, the application will crash and it will lose that data. We cannot have that. We must create resilient operations. So my red flag is when I see an architecture that it's not designed to be resilient. That's the biggest one in my point of view. The second one, that's another one that is very important, is the data models that we see today in current data centers. It's kind of old-fashioned way of thinking. For example, I've seen a lot of applications that they defragmentize the data points. For example, if you have a row of values and the application just split the values and takes the metadata of the data and process it separately to be more atomic. The problem is that when you want to reconstruct the whole set, you have to query a lot of rows in the database. So the database tends to be sluggish, tends to be in pain, and you have to increase the hardware. And if the whole data points are not stored yet, you will only have partials. So it's important to have a good data model for every application. Well, this is a rule for on-prem or on the cloud, but on the cloud, the hardware should be really optimized and the software should be designed to be flawless. If we take advantage of the cloud, the software, it will have flaws for sure, but in our control, we have to make it in a way that it's fully resilient to not have any flaws. So data model should be aligned with the business needs and be processed sometimes in aggregated and not in separate. This is a huge point, data model. this is, for me, it's another red flag.
Okay.
And the other red flag is overcomplexing. So another, well, when you design an architecture in the cloud, you tend to put the pieces that we think it should be there. The compromise of that is when we create a software in the cloud, especially in event streaming, uh, in event and streaming, we should design the application to do exactly what we need, and without
According to
any,
the requirement. Yeah.
according to the requirements, and in organizing the codes and the way of the application or the workflow of the application to be as linear as possible. Because if you define a lot of variants, there's going to be missing some parts. So overcomplicating an application, it can be a downfall, and this happens a lot. Um, of course, everything is reversible, but it's very demanding, to analyze an application that's already done and try to simplify it. So there's a sweet spot of simplifying an application and overcomplication. So there's a sweet spot in the middle that we have to reach it, and to make sure we get there. We can do POCs. I'm a big fan, a huge fan of POCs, because when I design an architecture for any application, and I'm speaking about applications that process millions of data points per second, I try to design and I try to make POCs for everything. So again, all the cloud providers will give you credits to test out and to develop the application accordingly to the business needs. Again, the business needs will rule here, and we have to test if every business rule is implemented accordingly, and make sure that the architecture that we design, it's the best fit for it. So there is a period of analysis, building, construction, deconstruction, before we reach to a closed architecture, to a correct point. So red flag, overcomplicating and not doing POCs.
Yes, very
At
important.
least for large application, at least for large applications. I always do POCs, and I'm proud to say that most of my applications, that was migrations from all other applications that had huge costs, and I've reached optimizations around 97% of the cost, in 97% as well for performance. I've took applications that took 9 hours to do their jobs to take minutes. So, and they have millions of cost every month to thousands. So it's very important to think in the most straight line as possible, and to POC what you have in mind.
Okay. So yeah, I think these are some of the great red flag you just initiated, and anyone who are dealing with these kind of work, they can easily identify or figure out these red flags. And if there are some these kind of red flags, they can work on the present measures, like they can start working on those issues, so that they can make sure that their project is not going in the wrong direction. So that's a very insightful thing you just shared, no. And now, moving ahead, we will talk about one of the very important topic related to gaming and high volume system, because we all know that they both demand low latency and scalability at the same time. So, what specific architectural pattern have you found work best for for handling the massive concurrent load? Okay, because in gaming as well as high level system, we know that it needs a proper low latency and scalability. So, what is your architectural pattern that you follow to make sure that everything is perfect for handling the concurrent load?
Oh, that's an awesome question. That's one of my biggest areas, the high volume, as I stated before.
Okay.
So basically, I'll do event driven for almost every large volume application. So we have to think about my projects as they have to be extremely resilient. They have to be to reach a very demanding SLAs because of market regulations and all that stuff. So for me, it's very important to create an architecture that is extremely resilient and can cope with the performance.
Okay.
So event-driven in most clouds is the most efficient way to go. If you go to AWS, you can go to SNS, SQS. You can work with Lambdas. I've worked with Lambdas a lot. In a recent project in AWS, I've created a multiplexer for Lambdas that one Lambda can process more than one Lambda. So you have an account limit of 100,000 Lambdas concurrently requests. And I've changed the way the Lambdas work, and I can reach 300 concurrent requests per Lambda. And so you have 300 multiplied by 100,000 concurrent requests. So it's a very good increment. So again, I've worked with AWS to do this, and they've tested it out and they saw it. It was a very, very demanding project. It was very nice to implement and make the POCs of it. And one of the things that I think it's the best is the event-driven. The event-driven will allow us to have reprocessing, as we will have for sure problems with the database. So we have to have a resilient process, and event-driven will allow us to create dead letter queues, retries automatically, and all the native mechanisms that the cloud providers give us. Well, that's pretty much it, event-driven. And of course, there's one rule that not many people follow, which is in one subscriber, you can only do one thing.
Correct.
And what does this mean? Is that one acting component should be only to store in the database, for example, or to store the data in a bucket. And another one should be sending the information over to the next step of the workflow, to another topic in the event-driven system, or another queue if you're in AWS. So it's very important that one subscriber only do one thing. Because why? Because if it fails, it will not reprocess the previous step. For example, when you process the information and you store it in the database, if the storing of the information in the database fails, you will be reprocessing the data again. So you have to create a step to process the information, and you have to create another step to store it in the database. Why? Because if the database fails, you won't have to reprocess it again. You won't have to pay for that reprocessing of the information. So as much as you can, only do one thing. This is a golden rule. And for example, there was another typical effort, which is the connections of the database are out. You don't have connections available, so it will break, and you'll process it again. Another one is the quotas for the storage accounts, or the cloud storage, or the S3 buckets. If you are out of quota, you cannot store the information on the quota, so you have to reprocess the data again and prepare it to store it again. So you're paying, and if you have a very demanding system with very short SLAs, and you have millions of requests, one downtime in the database or a quota on limit, it will generate thousands and thousands and thousands of errors. So, and you have to reprocess everything. You say, it's nothing. No, it is, because it's a million requests or 2 million requests per second. And those 2 or 3 million requests a second will cost a lot of money. And it's not, if you process the information, why processing again? So it's easier to divide and conquer. One subscriber only does one operation. This is one of the golden rules I try to follow. Only exceptionally, I break this rule for exceptional use cases, but I try to make it like this every time, to make sure that everything will fall into place. And if your database is down, or the zone in the cloud provider is down, all the information will be there and will be reprocessed as soon as the system is up again. So this is a very important topic for me. never lose data.
Yeah, right. So yeah, thanks for sharing these golden rules, and I'm sure those who are into this domain, they understand like why it is so important to follow those rules in order to get the proper product so that it will handle in low latency and everything is as per your requirement. So, Nuno, like there are plenty of things that we can discuss here technically, but as we are on short on time, so I just want to take a couple of more questions before we conclude the discussion. And this question is regarding the support of network, because what I believe, like behind every person, there is a support of network who had a defining impact on your journey, our journey, right? So, looking back on your career, who were the key people around you who had a defining impact on your journey so far?
Well, I really have to name my wife because
Okay.
she's a beacon for almost every aspect of my life and my direction. She's been empowering me and making me believe in myself for a long time. And she's a real support. Not only professionally, she's also an engineer.
Mhm.
But she's my beacon of morality and also dedication, and
Okay.
that's my wife, Kita Bakit.
Okay. All right. So now we want to know a bit about your country or the place you belong from. So, as a proud citizen of Portugal, what one thing you would like to share with the rest of the world about your country, maybe about your culture or anything that is close to your heart?
Well, I've worked in a lot of places around the world, and I have one thing that I'm really proud of. Well, sometimes it's not reason to be proud, but I think in most situation is.
Mm-hmm.
The Portuguese people, since ancient times, we have the ability to innovate and create different things
Yes.
and to adapt rapidly. We've created a lot of navigation instruments. Uh, we mastered all the ships as well. We've created a lot of industry on that as well. And I think the Portuguese people are very good technicians,
Yes.
and they tend to adapt and solve any big issues that they have in hands. I think Portuguese people, I think it's the most valuable asset of Portugal, because we are, I believe that we are very resourceful, and I
Mm.
think it's a very good characteristic from
Yes.
Portuguese
Right.
people.
All right. So, yeah, thank you so much, Nuno, for
Thank
joining
you.
us today in this episode and for sharing so much information regarding the cloud architecture and for sharing those golden rules. I'm sure it will help a lot other people. So, thank you once again for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much.